Hey everyone, and welcome back. Johnny B here with Devslopes.com, and in this video we are going to start working on the player health system. So let's go ahead and get started. Go ahead and come on down here to our scripts folder and create a new C# script and call that player health. Alright, open that up in mono develop, pop that over here. And so in our last video we got our enemies' attacks going, and so whenever the player is within range, a specific range, the enemy will attack, and we have our colliders on our enemy weapons now, and so we need a way to check when that collider hits the player. And one thing that I wanted to change real quick is inside of our enemies with our colliders, we want these to be triggers, okay? So I'm going to select the left hammer in the tanker, and for the box collider I selected is trigger. And I'm going to do the same thing for the right hammer, so I'm going to set that to be a trigger because we're going to check for trigger events inside of the player health, okay? I'm going to do the same thing for our soldier, so I'm going to open up our soldier and select down here for the box collider and set it to be is trigger. Okay, there you go. And so coming back over to our player health, now that that's done, what do we need for a player to have health? We're going to need to know how much health it's starting with. We need to keep track of the health. We're going to need access to our animator. So let's go ahead and put in all of our variables that we're going to need. So I'm going to say serialize, I can never spell this word, serialize field, and we're going to start with an int that is starting health, and we'll just go with 100. Then, because we want to give ourselves a little bit of breathing room when we're struck, we are also going to give ourselves a time since last hit variable. So you know, if you get surrounded by 5 enemies and they're just hacking at you, you'll get hit once and then you'll get a little bit of breathing room to extract yourself from that situation. So we'll start that out at about 2 seconds and adjust as necessary or as seems good. And then for some private variables, we are going to need a timer to keep track of the time between hits. And then we're going to need a reference to our character controller, because once we die, we don't want to be able to still move around our prostrate dead body around the level. So we're going to get a reference to that so that we can disable it later on. And then we are going to need our animator so that we can play the death animation. And finally, we are going to need a variable for our current health. All right, looks good. All right, so let's get going. Let's get references to our components. So anim is equal to get component. The component that we want is of type animator. We want our character controller, so that's equal to get component of type character controller. And we want our current health to equal our starting health when we start the level, okay? And then in our update, we are just going to keep track of the time by saying timer is equal to, or is plus equal time dot delta time. So that'll just keep a running update on the timer. Okay, so perfect. So now we need to do a check for when we have a trigger event enter our collider space, okay? So we have our personal little bubble, which is our capsule, and whenever anything enters it, this function is going to kick off, and that function is a built-in function. It's called void on trigger enter, okay? And that takes a collider called other. So we only want to know when a weapon strikes us, right? We don't care if it's a barrel, a tree, or anything like that. So we need a way to check if it is a weapon. So we are going to come back into our Unity editor. And the way we're going to do that is we are going to tag our weapons with a specific tag. So up here in the tag, you're able to add specific tags to use. So we're going to add the tag of, and so I just clicked on add tag, and we're going to click this plus button and say weapon. Okay, and that didn't add it like usual, so we got to go back to our weapon and tag weapon. So I've added it to the sword for the soldier. Going to open up the tanker, select the left hammer, and set the tag to weapon. And then for the right hammer, also set the tag to weapon. All right, awesome, perfect. Save, and let's jump back into our code. So we want to do a check for if it's a weapon, and we also only want to register a hit if it is after the time since last hit has exceeded. So we're going to say if timer is greater than or equal to time since last hit, and we also only want to take hits if we're not already dead. So if the game is not over yet, so we're going to say game manager dot instance dot game over, and I'll put an exclamation point in front of that, so it's not that. And then we are going to do the check to see if whatever is entering our space is in fact a weapon. So we're going to say if other dot tag is equal to weapon. Then we are going to take hit and reset the timer to 0. So we haven't created this take hit function yet, but just to go over this one more time, we have an onTrigger enter function that looks for a collider, and it's called other. We do a check to see if we are past the time since our last hit and that our game is still going. And then we do a check to see if the collider that has entered other, whether the tag for it is of type is weapon. And if it is, then we take the hit. Okay, so now let's create that take hit function. So we're going to say void take hit. And what do we want to happen when we take a hit? So if our current health is greater than 0, so if we're still alive, we're just going to reduce our current health by a specific amount. So what we want to do is we want to, and then we also want to send over to the game manager our current hit points. So remember, in our game manager we created that function, that public function player hit, and it's expecting the current hit points, so we're going to pass in our current health. That's good. And then whenever we are hit, as long as we're still alive, as long as we have more health than 0, we are going to also play the animation that is called hit back. Okay, and that comes from our models animation that we have created. So in our animator for the hero, you see we have we actually don't have the animation for the hit back. So let's go ahead and add that. So over here in our models, we need to have our hero and add hurt. So that is what it is actually called, hurt. In the on the website it was called hit back. So we want to change this to hurt. All right, so, and then when we get hit, we also want to do the check to see whether we are going back to idle or walk. So I'm going to create a make transition to idle, and make transition to walk. And the transition condition for going back to walk is walking is true, and for idle, the condition is walking is false. All right, and we also are going to need our die animation. So back to the models, back to our hero, we're going to drag in here die, and so die can be from any state, right? So we are going to just go ahead and make transition to die. And we are going to need a trigger for that. So I'm going to create a new parameter here by just clicking on the plus, and we're going to create a trigger, and we're going to call that hero die. All right, and we're going to select this transition from any state to die, and come down here to the conditions and select hero die, and save that. All right, so that's just a little bit more animation setup that we're going to need. And let's open up our editor again for player health. So we have our take hit if the current health is greater than 0, and we are going to pass over to the game manager our current health so that it can monitor the game over boolean. And then we're going to play hurt, and then we are going to reduce our health by I think we'll do 10 for starters. Okay. However, if the current health is less than or equal to 0, we are going to kill player. All right, and that's another function that we haven't created quite yet. So let's hop out of the take hit function, and we're going to say void kill player. And again, we're going to pass over to the game manager dot instance dot player hit, and we're going to pass in the current health, and we are going to set our animation trigger, so anim dot set trigger, and the trigger that we are going to set is hero die. All right, perfect. And then, because we don't want to be able to move around a dead body, we are going to disable our character controller. So we're going to say character controller dot enabled is equal to false. And let's go ahead and save that, and let's try running it. I think I got everything. Might have forgotten something, but let's go ahead and run it and check. Okay. All right, so we're playing, and got attack, and let's see if we get hit, and we are not getting hit. We aren't registering the hit because we're not seeing the hit back animation. So let's figure out what we got going on here. And per usual, it's something silly. I forgot to add the component for the player health to the player. So I selected the hero and added the player health script. And so let's try that again. Come over here to our soldier, and bam, we are indeed getting hurt. Ugh. All right, cool. So, and up here you can see in the animator controller, when we get struck, our hurt animation plays and then goes back to either idle or walking, depending on what it is that we are doing. So there's something here that I want you to notice. You can see that, let's see if we can get this soldier over here. So it doesn't matter at what point that the soldier, that we come into contact with the weapon during its animation. And so that doesn't look very great, because he could just be pulling his arm back to strike us and we get hit. Or the tanker lifts up his hammer and we get hit, right? Way before they even strike with their weapon. So we need to fix that. But you do see that we died, so that is, so here's another place that we need to do a check as to whether or not we are dead or not. We can't move. Our character controller is enabled, but our rotation is still enabled. So we got a few things to fix. One, we need to disable our turning ability when we're dead. Our enemies are still moving. You know, they're still trying to get to us, and so we want to set those to idle. And we want to be able to adjust the animations so that the weapons only hurt us at the correct moments. And so we're going to introduce something called animation events. And these are a pretty powerful thing. It's a really cool tool for you guys to use. So let's go into our models. And you know what, first though, let's go ahead and fix a few things in our script. We need to update our movement. So we need to update our movement. We need to do a check. If game manager.instance.game over. So if the game is not over, then go ahead and try to move towards us. Else, we are going to say nav.enabled is equal to false, and we are going to have the enemies play their, not playback time, play their idle animation. Okay. So I think that looks good. And just to recap that, we're coming in here to our enemy move script, and we're just doing a check to make sure that the game is not over. And if it's not over, then we have our enemies moving towards our player. But if it's over, we're going to disable the nav mesh agent, and then we're just going to play the idle animation. So let's go ahead and test that real quick. So I'm going to say well, first I'm going to reduce her health to 20 so that we don't have to wait around so long for them to kill us. All right, so I'm going to come down here to the soldier. He's going to whack us. We get hit and we die. Perfect. So our enemies go into their idle animation. All right, so that's fixed. The second thing that we wanted to fix was our player controller movement, so that we are only turning if the game is actually still going. So I'm going to say if. So I'm back here in the player controller in our fixed update, which is where we do our, handle our turning. So I'm going to say if game manager dot instance dot game over. So if it's not over, then we do our raycasting and turning. And we also need to do that up here as well, because if we don't, once we die, if I clicked one of these buttons, in fact, you know what, let's just show you real quick. So play. Okay, I'm gonna come down here. So we get hit, we die. So I can't turn anymore, so we fix that. But if I click one of the buttons, whoa, resurrection, and we're able to slice and dice. I still can't turn, and I can't move because those weren't enabled. So, but we do need to fix the attacking and the movement. So I'm going to say back over here in our player controller, I'm going to say if not game manager dot instance dot game over, then we do these. I'm just going to move that inside of our check. Okay, so that should take care of all of our movement and checks for whether or not our game is still going or not. Okay, and you know what? I need to explain this. I just realized that I never did go over where these move directions input axis are coming from. Okay, so we got horizontal get axis and vertical get axis. All right, so over here in our Unity editor, if we go down here to edit and project settings input, over here you'll see that we have axes and we have horizontal and vertical. So name of horizontal, we have left, right, and A and D. So that's why we use the A and D keys. Those are the default, or the left and right, for the horizontal axis, okay? And for the vertical, it's the default values is down and up, or S and W. And so that's where those horizontal and vertical terminology come from when we're saying input.getAxis. So basically we're saying when I press the A, we're getting the negative horizontal value from the input manager, okay? So that's good. So let's save that. Last thing we are working on from the list of bugs that we saw was that no matter where the weapon is during the animation, we're going to get hit if we come into contact with the collider. And that's just not very realistic, okay? And so what we want to do is we want to work with some animation events. So I'm going to come down here to our models, and we are going to check out our enemy animations. So we'll start with the soldier, and we're going to come down here and look at attack, okay? And I'm going to say edit, and I'm going to open this up. And so we can kind of see the issue here a little bit better. So if I play this, you see that we're attacking, all right? So, but if I scrub through here, right at the beginning, we could be injured by the weapon. Actually, we could be injured by the weapon even if we're not attacking. Let's actually test that. So I'm gonna press play. You know what? Let's see if we can disable the. Let's see if we can disable the attack. So I'm going to come into here, enemy attack, and I'm going to just comment out our test for. I'm going to comment out our test for player in range, and I'm just going to say player in range is equal to false, so that we're not triggering our attack. I'm going to save that. Don't do this. I'm just showing you this for reference as to why we need to fix what we are about to fix. So yeah, so they are not attacking us, but I am getting injured by their box colliders. And so what we need to do is we need to make sure that their box colliders, that their weapons, only hurt us when they are in animation or when we are in the attack, and then only when it makes sense for the animation to be hurting us, okay? So a couple things we need to do is, first off, these need to start out, so we'll go back to scene, our enemy weapons, they need to start out disabled, okay? So I'm just right here, I'm going to click right here to disable it for the left hammer, for the right hammer, as well as for the soldier down here on the finger one nub. All right, so all of our box colliders start out disabled. And what we're going to do is, based on a specific frame in the animation, we're going to re-enable our weapon box colliders, okay? So that way, if we're just walking around and he's not attacking us, it doesn't just hurt us. Or if it's not at the right time during the animation, it won't hurt us, okay? So now that we have our box colliders disabled, let's go back to our models with our soldier selected, and we'll check out our attack animation. And so, like I was trying to show you, if we scrub through here, at any point, we don't want it to be enabled at just any point. So I'm thinking like right about there is when we would start the attack. We would make it so that it can hurt us. And so you'll see that that's about 2/3 of the way through the animation. And so we only want our box collider to be enabled at that point. And that's where animation events come in, okay? So we can choose specific frames to trigger functions, okay? So we need to have with our attack animation selected, we're going to say edit, and we're going to come down here to events. I'm going to open this up and press the plus button here, and a window will pop up here, and we are going to call this enemy begin attack. Okay, and we don't need to worry about these. These are, you can actually pass in other variables or objects into the function, but we don't need to worry about that right now. So that's where the attack is going to begin. And let's open this up. Scroll down here. So here we can actually check out where we want to begin the attack. And I'm thinking about right about here at about frame 25. So here you can see where the scrubber is at. So I'm just going to drag our event, enemy begins attack, over right to there. Okay, so that looks good. And then I'm going to keep scrubbing and find a good point where it ends. And I think his attack is pretty much over right there, and that's at frame 31. So then I'm going to create a new event, add event, and I'm going to say enemy end attack, and close that. So now we have a very specific window of time when we want our enemy's weapon to be able to hurt us. So we have enemy begin and enemy end. But right now those are just events. Those aren't doing anything. So we need to add some code in our script to make that actually do something. So I'm going to come back into our enemy attack. So reopen your enemy attack and also reactivate, well, I'm going to reactivate the check for player in range and delete this. So if you followed along doing that, just to show yourself the check, go ahead and delete those and get it back to just like this, okay? So how animation events work is those events can be called from pretty much anywhere. So we're going to say public and void enemy begin attack. So we're calling the event that we specified inside of our animation. And so what do we want to happen when we hit that event? We want our weapon colliders to become active. So we're going to say for each. So I'm going to show you a little code completion thing here in the toolbox. So in the toolbox you can say for and then select the for each, and it'll autocomplete a little bit of code for you. So I'm going to say for each weapon in weapon colliders, and then I'm just going to say weapon dot enabled is equal to true. So that's perfect. And then for the public void enemy attack, so or enemy end attack, so this is when we finish the window of animation attack. We're going to say the same thing. So I'm just going to copy this and paste, and weapon.enabled is false. All right, perfect. So now when we go back to our Unity editor and press play, we should see that we should still be injured. So I'm looking at the attack animation, and it looks like our events weren't saved for some reason. Okay, so let's go ahead and just throw those back in. New event, enemy begin attack. Enemy begin attack, and that was over here somewhere. So that was about frame 25. So I'm going to drag the enemy begin attack there. And I think I forgot to press apply last time. So I'm going to press apply and create a new event. This is enemy end attack. And I'm going to drag that down to here about, and use our scrubber to drag over, and that looks good. All right, I'm going to press apply again and give us a little bit more room here and press play. And now let's try it out. All right, so boom. Yeah, we are indeed getting hurt. All right, so perfect. All right, nice, very nice. Okay, so we need to do the same thing with our tanker animation. So with our models selected, let's select our tanker and select his attack animation, edit it, and scroll down here to the events. And we're gonna just do the same thing. We're gonna find about where we want to begin and end our attack. So we're gonna say enemy begin attack. And the beauty is we can use the exact same functions and the same event names. So let's scroll through here, and I'm thinking like right about here would be a good place for our colliders to become active. So I'm going to drag over our event right to that point. I'm going to apply it, and then I'm going to create a new event, and I'm going to say enemy end attack. That looks good. And then enemy end attack, so he's got 2 swings, so right about there, I think will be good. And so I'm going to drag over our enemy end attack event right to there, and close that and apply. All right, perfect. So I'm going to save that and close this up a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and show you with the left hammer selected. So watch right here during the attacks. During the attack, it should become active only at those points that we have set with the animation events, okay? All right, so he attacks, the box collider becomes active, and then after the attack, it goes back to being inactive. And we can be injured by it. Very nice. All right, so there you go. Using animation events to constrain the window of time that the box colliders are active. And you could do a whole lot of stuff with these animation events. If we had sound effects for when the hammers struck the ground, we could, make some cool sound effects for that. We could have other sound effects for, when the ranger shoots his arrows. So you could do a lot of cool stuff with these animation events. So remember that. That's some great tools for you to use later on. And we are moving along. We got our enemies attacking, we got our player taking hits and damage, and so in the next videos we're going to work on the reversal, which is having the player inflict damage on the enemies, alright? So, hope you guys are enjoying this so far, and this is Johnny B with Devslopes.com signing off. See you in the next one.